bring up Deloitte and Coinbase. Now, what they don't tell you is that Coinbase is essentially a part of the U.S. government at this point. So Coinbase is ran by a bunch of NSA agents, right? A bunch of so there's this public-private swap that happens, especially in banking, where people who work for major banking institutions will leave the private sector to go work at the public sector and pass favorable laws for these institutions, and then go back to get cushion jobs in the private sector when they're finished with that. And what Coinbase is doing is kind of the opposite, where they want favorable regulation from the U.S. and they want exemptions from the kind of attacks that the U.S. is going to do on people like Binance. So what they do is they open their door to hire a bunch of NSA agents and a bunch of spooks, right? So Coinbase is the same company that's going to freeze all of your funds the minute you do something that is not exactly what the U.S. government wants you to do. And we've already seen this happen. So there was an exchange, a relatively small exchange, and this is like going back a few years ago, that at one point had processed some transactions by somebody that was a vendor on Silk Road. So this exchange had nothing to do with Silk Road, right? They had no communications with anybody at Silk Road. It wasn't the people who ran Silk Road, nothing like that. But at one point, someone had earned Bitcoin on Silk Road and exchanged it for USDC on this exchange. What happens? Coinbase and USDC freezes all of the capital and all of the USDC associated with this exchange, and they cooperate with the US government to prosecute this exchange owner because that exchange owner unknowingly allowed someone who was a vendor on Silk Road to trade on their exchange at one point. This is the kind of actions that Coinbase is willing to take, and it's only going to get worse the more power Coinbase gets. So as far as I'm concerned, Coinbase is they're just an extension of the U.S. banking establishment, and I would not trust any kind of audit that was done on them. I would not trust that there would be any kind of legitimate transparency. And we see that even when there is regulation, strong regulation, when you have this massive tie-in and collusion with the U.S. government, that regulation does not protect investors. So we saw this with Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff was the head of the SEC. He was the number one guy when it came to regulating equities. He was also one of the largest options traders in the US or globally. And he was protected by the SEC for decades as he stole user capital. And it was only until it got to the point where other major banks were losing money to Bernie Madoff, and it became public to these other major banking institutions that they were going to lose billions of dollars to Bernie Madoff, that action was taken against him. But Madoff was absolutely protected for decades by the U.S. government to allow him to act in this way. And a lot of people don't know what Bernie Madoff did. So what Bernie Madoff did was he ran an options and equity fund, and for some clients, he offered an options account where they effectively guaranteed a 2% monthly return. And month after month, they always gave this 2% return. And eventually, some of the major funds that were invested in him got suspicious. How is this guy able to offer 2% monthly returns month after month after month based on his trading performance? So a competing firm, who was the number 2 equity trading firm in the space went and talked to one of the clearinghouses and said, hey, we have a good relationship with you. Did anybody place these option trades this month? Because they looked at the options trades that Bernie Madoff had said that they took and didn't see any of that volume on the market. So this other firm went and talked to all the clearinghouses and said, hey, did anybody open this options trade this month? Did anybody can you give us any information about that? And every single one of the clearing firms said, no one opened up this options trade this month. And they realized what Bernie Madoff was doing is opening up legitimate options trades, and then depending if they had only made 1% profit that month, at the end of the month, he would add a trade to his books that he didn't actually take, that wasn't actually cleared with any clearinghouse, that would have made 1%. So that he could add that to the books and say, look, we made our 2% goal this month. And if he had, for example, made 5% that month, he would add a trade to his books at the end of the month that would make it look like they lost 3% that month. So they could say, look, we made our 2% goal that month. And he did that month after month after month for decades. And there's no way that the SEC did not recognize this. It's impossible that they didn't recognize this. But he got protection because he was the former president of the SEC. So when you have this close tie to government, you cannot rely on the government to regulate them. You're relying on the people who are benefiting to regulate themselves, essentially. So this is why I don't see anything that Coinbase is doing as some sort of a benefit to their users or something that makes me want to invest with them. And I don't expect Coinbase, if they were doing anything dirty, to get called out on it at any point until there's some player that is larger than them, that is more tied into the government than them, that uncovers the fraud themselves and exposes it, like what happened to Madoff. But until that happens, I put no trust in these companies like Coinbase, and not only because I don't expect that regulators would do their job with them, also because audits are nonsense. We know audits are nonsense. We know that it's very easy to pay off a company to give a favorable audit. It's very easy to bury bad audits. And because we know that this company, the minute you do something that is not favorable to them or the U.S. government, they will come after your money. And this isn't just money on Coinbase. This is if you have USDC in your wallet, for example, which is why we use BUSD and not USDC or any other kind of stablecoin. Because out of any other exchange, such as exchange, Binance has done the most to show what matters as far as their proof of reserves. They are stating that they are not in any debt at all. That does not mean that they don't have liabilities. And when CZ cannot speak to all of the liabilities, but he can say that they don't have any kind of outstanding debt, that tells you that they do have reserves. They are not relying on debt to run their company, meaning they're a profitable, strong company. And he doesn't want to get into what their liabilities are on a live interview because single one of their liability, because it doesn't even make sense to get into that. He provided what is important, which is what their reserves are and that they don't have any kind of outstanding debt that would eat into these reserves and that they're profitable. Okay, I'm going to mute myself. And then we'll try to get through the rest of this kind of quick.